Happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network's podcast, Marvel-ous Movie Mondays, where we normally talk about Marvel, but this month, or this week, Kelsey and I are talking about Halloween. It's Marvel-ous Movie Tuesdays, I guess, not Mondays today. Kelsey, you look a lot scarier than I am, because I rushed from work, and I was like, you know what, I'd rather get a show in with a good amount of time than waste another 30 minutes trying to scrounge up an outfit that I could put together. But again, this Kelsey's costumes are the real reason people tune into this thing. Every year, you always one up yourself. Kelsey, what are you
Thank
tonight?
you.
What is this? Is this
So I got this skeleton onesie at the beginning
oh,
of the season, and I thought, and I knew that I was always going to wear this, but I don't know, something just like, I hate Halloween. Like, I feel like I talk about this every year, how much I
really?
don't
Okay.
like this holiday.
Hmm.
But something about me just like possessed me to just like break out the makeup brushes and do some face paint to go along with it. Especially
Gotcha.
because part of me was like, I feel like Dill might have something good, and I don't
I'm
wanna be
sorry.
like, I don't wanna be the, like, like, the party pooper on the
Right.
podcast and not do
I'm the party
something as
pooper today.
equally
Yeah.
fun. But I did just read your name, Dill, and I did chuckle about it. It
Thank you.
says it's the
Yeah.
great pickle, Charlie
That's the thing.
Brown.
I'm still in orange, and if you want to
Yeah.
interpret me as a pumpkin, you can. I've lost a little weight since we first began podcasting years ago, but I can still be a pumpkin if you want to look at me as a pumpkin. People, we are live, so we might have some comments, some viewers as we go. But this was kind of just our idea. Hey, why not just like podcast on Halloween and just do what we did last year, and that's kind of just recap our movies we watched for the 31 days of Halloween. If you haven't been watching our TikToks, on Kelsey's TikTok, Kelsey A. Kilp, she has been doing her random Halloween generator where she'll pick a number at random every day. It corresponds to a different film, and then she watches that film and she posts reaction videos. I have been I already put together a schedule and I've been watching every day on my TikTok,
Mhm.
which is the Dill Pickle Movie Network, and reviewing a film. So Kelsey does the viewing of, I do the review after, and we had a few crossovers this month, at least one or two. But for the most part, Kelsey watched a lot of like the classics that she had not seen, and she was going for scary. And then I kind of broke it up. I did like a week of black and white horror, a week of 80s horror, a week of Halloween movies, a week of modern classics, and then on the weekends I watched some new releases. So we're gonna bring you our top five, our bottom five, or at least our most disappointing, maybe not just our bottom five, because like the worst movies I watched, some of them are enjoyable to me at least. And then of course we'll talk about some of the biggest scares that we had. Are we doing a top five for that as well? I can't remember.
Yeah. I have a list of top 5
Cool, cool. So it's
scares.
like
So
five
I'm just
scares. I don't have any
yeah.
sort of order for them, so I'll just like kind of just say them
I'm
when we get
putting
there.
them in
But
an order
yeah,
right now
gotcha.
while
Okay,
you're
okay.
talking, Dill.
Yeah, like give us a little just brief overview of how your experience was, because these are like some of the most acclaimed movies, and you're watching them all. I believe all of these were first watches for you, right?
Yes. So they were all first watches for me. Some of them like super classics. Like cannot believe I made it this far in my life and
Hmm.
had not seen them. Um I just really just wanted a good scare this year. Last year I did some kind of like kid stuff in the mix there. I did
Yeah.
like the Nightmare Before Christmas and Hocus Pocus, and it's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. There you go. Dill. And I just really wanted to be in the Halloween spirit, which is just
Hmm.
getting spooky and getting scary. And so I literally Googled like scariest, scariest movies of all time, and like
Hmm.
kind of like put together a list based off of only things that I had not seen. I'm not gonna lie, Dill, I'm still in the midst of completing this 31
Gotcha.
Frights of Halloween, but
It's okay.
I am determined to get it out before midnight tonight. I
Wow.
have one more movie to watch. I just watched movie number 30, and I have to
Gotcha.
watch number 31 after this podcast.
Gotcha. So is that why you have a heart out?
Oh, no. I am actually watching something else with my friends. We started the Netflix series, The Fall of the House of Usher, that's based off
Mm,
of the works of Edgar Allan Poe, and
yeah.
it's really, really good and
Directed
written.
by Mike Flanagan, who is a big
Yes.
Chad's a big fan of Mike Flanagan. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan. He did The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, which were
Mm,
super successful, popular other series that he has on Netflix. They're honestly perfect this time of year to just like honestly, you can binge them, you can spread them out if you get too
mm,
spooked. But they're just perfect for this time of year. And when I found out that he was creating this other series, I was like, we have to watch this. So my friends and me and my two friends in Jersey are Netflix partying it. So we're all
yeah.
watching
Nice.
it
Like a
together
little
on
watch
Netflix
party.
party.
Cool, cool, cool.
Exactly. So I have to watch that first and then watch my movie and hopefully get it out before midnight tonight because it's I'm a purist, I like to be traditional.
Yeah.
I'd like to not spill over into November because November is just fall time. It's no longer spooky time, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm just like writing down
Oh,
my bottom five while we're
sure.
talking. But yeah, I mean, it was such a fun month watching. We do have some comments, so I just want to say hello, Chad. Chad says Usher's very very scary. I'm glad Chad was listening while you were talking about that. And then, holy crap, is that a dead person next to you, Dylan? I sure hope not. But
Thank you,
Kelsey, good
Chad.
thumbs up. Do you have a pulse? Um,
Yeah,
no.
still
Okay.
here, still with
Cool.
us. Don't worry.
Cool. So yeah, last year we kind of talked about our favorite traditions and Halloween stuff too. But yeah, I mean, Halloween as we get older is a little more chill, but I've kind of like centered a lot of my Halloween spirit toward movies. And 31 days is
Yeah.
tough. And I managed to, except for 2 days where I had to watch a movie a day later, I managed to do a single movie every day. And some of the TikToks came out a little later, but for the most part, I watched all the movies on the day. I still got to watch John Carpenter's Halloween tonight, but I've seen that one. So yeah, it was a pretty fun endeavor. And I don't really know where to start, Kels, but do you want to just jump into your want to do top fives first or bottom fives first?
I think we should start negative and then
Cool,
maybe end on like we'll do our positives and then we'll just end on the scary stuff. And I
cool,
think we
cool,
should do
cool.
it like that.
Yeah, so let's start. What was your? Did you rank these as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
So I
I did.
kind of ranked them from like l- least disappointing to most disappointing.
Okay.
Like, because I realized, okay, so I actually watched Split today, and I
Mhm.
realized like halfway through it, I was like, I think I've seen this, but every other movie I have definitely not seen, and so I only had of like things that I heard like about going into them. Like I didn't
Right.
know a ton, and I was just expecting my first one on my bottom 5 to be just a little bit scarier. I thought that it
Mhm.
was gonna there's one, notorious shot from this film that I thought was gonna hold a little bit more weight and, like,
Mhm.
be a little bit more scary.
Can I just interrupt really quick before you continue?
Yes,
Just for
go
those
ahead.
listening, my bottom five are going to be like much worse than Kelsey's bottom five because Kelsey's picking a bottom five out of 31 movies that are considered like at least to some degree a classic or a modern classic. There are very
Sure.
few movies that Kelsey's going to watch that are like genuinely perceived as bad. Whereas I was like watching some of the grime at the bottom of the barrel. So that's going to be kind of our. So if you hear a movie on Kelsey's that you're like, that's a bottom five horror movie, it's a bottom five of the 31 she watched, whereas mine are bottom five of also the 31 I watched, but I feel like the 31 I watched had a bigger range of like badness, whereas you were mostly watching good movies. So that's just a little disclaimer before. But continue. There was one shot you thought would be like more iconic.
There was one shot that I thought would be more iconic, and I just thought as a whole that this movie was gonna be scarier,
Okay.
and it just seemed scarier to me back in the day because I was younger, but my first one on this list is actually gonna be The Ring,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
from
the Gore
2002.
Verbinski. Okay, yeah. So tell us about the ring.
S there's the main thing that I knew about The Ring is that it's about the girl who crawls out of the TV, right? And I
Yeah.
just thought that, like, that happens I mean, like, it's from 2002. I don't feel bad if I'm spoiling this for you right now, but that shot happens way, way, way at the end of the movie to one of, like, the very side characters. Like, it doesn't even happen to, like, one of the main characters, if I'm remembering this right. And I don't know, it just like every other scare leading up to that one, I just thought was gonna be scarier. I did appreciate the fact that it kind of took on its own like story, that there was like a really good like mystery element behind it because, it's the premise of this movie is that you watch this tape and then you have 7 days to live, and it's kind of the tape itself, it's on a VHS tape, if any of you remember what those were from back in the day.
Mhm.
And it's kind of giving like a student's like indie short film. It's just like a series of like black and white images of just like random stuff. And so this woman watches this tape and now she's afraid she's going to die in 7 days, and she's an investigative journalist. So she herself is putting together like what all these shots in this tape means, and she's obviously trying to it's a race against the clock here, and she's trying to like figure all this out before the 7 days is up and she's
Right.
out of time. So it's like, oh, and who is it? Naomi Watts is
Mm.
the main woman in this. movie, and she's great in everything that she does. She's, from that movie that I love, The Impossible.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, she does a great job. Also, I don't know his name, but she co-stars with one of the guys from Grey's Anatomy. He's like from the later
Oh,
seasons that
cool. I
they
can
try
find it.
to pair Meredith up with. He has
Oh,
like
yeah.
New Zealandish accent that I can't really place. If you
Yeah.
know who I'm talking
Martin
about.
Henderson. Yeah, he plays, what is his name? Nathan, I think, in Grey's
Yeah,
Anatomy.
yeah, yeah.
He's
I think
also
so.
in another film you watched, X, which may come up or not. But
Yes,
he's,
yes,
yeah,
he
he's
was.
one of
Yes,
the,
he
like, the
was.
cinematographer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was great in that. But yeah, she does a great job, and like I appreciated the story element of it, but like I said, I went into this really wanting a good spook, and this one just didn't do it for me.
Okay.
So for those reasons, it's my least disappointing.
Gotcha. Yes, of the five, it's your least. Yeah, I gotcha. I
Yes.
never seen it, so I can't really comment, but I will someday. I'll tell you right now, all five of my bottom five most disappointing are from this year. So it's very interesting because all the movies I watched that were like new releases, all but like three of them were disappointments to me. So I watched one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine new releases from this year, and I only liked seven. I only liked two of them. Seven of them were disappointments. Two of them I'm not going to talk about, but um,
Okay.
so I'm going to talk about five of them. Two of them
Okay.
were just like
Oh,
not great.
so your bottom 5 are all from this year?
Yes. So
That's
if
crazy.
I were to rank all the films I watched this month, the bottom like seven of the bottom chunk of it are movies from
Yeah.
this year. There are only two movies from this year that I watched that I liked. One of them is in my top five, but I'm going to
Okay.
start with the one that was probably the least disappointing because it
Okay.
had like one element that I really liked to it, and that is actually the one you predicted I would like most, which is Renfield. Um, the thing is, Renfield,
Okay, great.
Nicolas Cage as Dracula is the draw there, and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that aspect of it. So
Uh-huh.
like I was like, okay, I'm digging this, but there's not enough of that, and I just didn't find the rest of the story to be compelling enough. It almost felt like a PG-13 horror, even though it was R, because the kills themselves didn't feel interesting enough or like inspired enough to where like
Mm.
it almost felt toned down, even though it was still violent and gory. And then Aquafina, they have like some police subplot that like really didn't work. So I just wasn't a fan. Have you seen Renfield or no?
No.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't a fan. It was just not as fun as I was expecting. Like, it didn't need to get as serious as it did. Like, if it had just leaned more into the camp of it all, I think it would have been better. Nicolas Cage is good. That's kind of why I'm like, putting it at five, not number one, obviously. But it was the one you predicted, so I felt bad watching it. I was like, oh, Kelsey thought I'd love this, but knowing that you haven't
Hey,
seen it, I
no
was like,
worries.
that made me
I
feel
mean,
better. If you had seen it and been like, oh my god, Dill, you're gonna love it, then I would have felt
oh,
bad.
no,
But
no,
the
no.
fact that you predicted it, I was like, oh no. But then I was like, you haven't seen it, so I don't feel as bad saying I didn't like it. Really quickly before you give your thoughts on that, Stacey goes, currently trying to
Yeah.
decide which scary movie to watch next. I binged a lot of Halloween movies today. Well, we're gonna give our top five after we give our bottom five, so maybe that could inspire something. And then Chad says The Ring is good, Ringu is better, but also a slow burn. So maybe the original Japanese one we'll check out next year. I
I
might.
did hear that that one was better for
Yeah.
sure.
Any thoughts on the Renfield before we move on?
Listen, Dill, the only reason why I kind of plucked that one out of thin air was because that was the one that I had was kind of familiar with, because you had a lot of like oldie ones that I wasn't like
Hadn't
super
even heard
familiar
of.
with,
Yeah.
and then I didn't want to pick like The Shining because that's just so basic, that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick the Nicolas Cage film because I feel like that's either gonna be like a swing or a miss, like he kind of always is. Like, you never know what you're gonna
Mhm.
get from Sir Nicolas Cage, and that's
Right.
what we love about him.
Mhm.
So I really just wanted to pick mostly the controversial pick.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like, oh my god, I'm a diehard Renfield fan,
Right.
like you're
Okay.
gonna love this. So don't feel that bad. It's
Gotcha.
really okay.
Yeah. So what's your number four, Kels? Most disappointing.
My number 4, and I might get some hate for this. Like, I don't
No,
know
it's okay.
how Chad feels about this film, because I know that he's watching right now.
I know Chad's like our
But
horror. Chad and Stacey
listen,
are both in the chat, and they're like big horror experts. So I feel like if I say the wrong thing, but
great.
hey, no, horror is
No
so
pressure, no
subjective
pressure.
because like comedy, what makes us funny, what makes us laugh is all different by person, and by what makes us like scared it varies by person. Sorry, I just saw Stacey's comment. The
What I
Shining basic. I
yes.
know you meant because it's a classic. He's obviously already seen. Yeah, yeah,
No, what I meant by
yeah. A
basic is
basic
like, yeah,
choice. Yeah.
obviously that's gonna be like one of the better movies that you watch, is what
Right,
I mean.
right.
So like
And
I
that
didn't
was
want to
one I
just
had
pick
already
that
seen,
one.
by the way. Yeah, that so the ones I had already seen were
Yeah.
that, the Shining, um, The Sixth Sense, The Witch, Hocus Pocus, and Halloween. Those are the only 5 I had seen before. Everything else was the first watch. So
I was fascinated to hear, Dill, that you didn't like The Sixth Sense the first
the
time that
first
you
time I
saw it.
watched it, but I did like it afterwards. And Chad says waiting to be outraged,
Okay,
and
so
Stacey says no.
I'll get to my number
Yeah,
2 most disappointing right now.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it Chad, it's less about the movie and more about me. And it's just that I hate when I walk away from a movie and I just go, I just don't get it. Like, I hate when I'm just like, "Ugh, I have to, like, Google what all this meant." Like,
Mhm.
not that I want a movie to, like, spell everything out for me because that's annoying if you don't trust
Right.
your audience to, like, pick up on things and be intelligent, but, like, sometimes when something's too obscure, I'm just, like, annoyed, and maybe this
Okay.
is more a comment on my intelligence than anything else, but my second movie is Donnie Darko
Okay.
of
I
my
this was a first
least
watch for me as
disappointing.
well. It's not on my disappointed list, obviously, because I said they're all from this year. But why were you a little
Yeah.
disappointed, Kelsey?
Just because I didn't get it, Dill.
It's
And
okay.
Matt was very kind and he explained it to me in the chat, but it's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, I maybe I have to give it another try. I thought that it was like pretty cool and like kind of like indie-esque in the way that it was like shot and
Mhm.
everything. So like
Yeah.
it felt like, I love when horror films just don't feel like a
Conventional.
exactly.
Mhm.
And I love when there's like a twist on it, like a take on it, a theme, like something that like makes it stand out, makes it a little different. And that's what I appreciate about this film. It's just that it just got a little too jumbled for me and a little too messy at the
Mhm.
end that I just I didn't get it. And
Yeah,
for
it's
those
okay.
reasons I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, I understood the ending, but I also think it's one of those movies where I think I'll appreciate it more on a second watch because the first time you're just
Mm,
trying to piece together exactly what it is, and I think like, is it a coming of age movie? Is it a comedy? Because there's funny moments in
mhm.
it, especially with that
Mhm.
teacher played by Dwight's date from the dinner party. When Dwight brings that older woman who babysat him
Oh,
to the
yeah,
dinner
yeah, yeah,
party.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's like the
Her
teacher.
name's like yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but she's great. But like, yeah, you got little shades of things, and then it's also supposed to be a horror film, so it's like hard to think about where it's gonna go, and there's some sci-fi elements. But Chad and Stacey aren't too mad at you. Chad says, Karen, I love that one, but it's okay. It's a little
Whew,
complicated.
thank God.
Donnie can grow on you. Yeah. And then Stacey says, I love Donnie Darko, but it can be divisive. So yeah, it makes sense that you might not have gotten it on the first try. And even if you don't get it on the third or fourth, or even if you don't watch it again, who cares? I mean, there are plenty of fans. They don't need another fan. It's always nice to have another fan, but no movie needs more fans when you're at that status as Donnie Darko. Some movies might need
Right.
fans. I'll tell you a movie that definitely doesn't need a fan. That's Slaughterhouse, which is my number 4. This is one of those movies this is
Oh
one of
my
those movies that
god.
I was really like hoping would be like just like ridiculous fun. Just watching it and being like, that was so silly. That was a good time. Kind of like that movie Rubber that I love with the tire, that I
Yes.
obsessed over in middle school. You're
Yes,
very,
I
yeah, so you
remember
remember. So,
Rubberdale.
but like I just was like, I feel like the movie was self-aware of what it was, and sometimes that can be a good thing. But I think for a movie like that, I think the better like bad movies are the ones where the director thinks they're making something great and then it ends up being crazy, like The Room. And I feel like
Mm,
this was so self-aware. But when you're self-aware, you still then have to make smart jokes to show that you're self-aware. But here it was like
mm.
they kind of understood they were being self-aware of the movie, but they were still writing atrocious dialogue, but not in a funny way. Like I was never entertained by the badness. I was just kind of like, Ugh,
This
you
is
know?
bad.
I mean, it's about a sloth who starts killing off these sorority girls because it's a petty little bitch. It should be funnier. And I think there's a charm to the
That sounds
premise, but it's also
hilarious.
it's also a little too long for what the premise is. So I just would have liked, maybe if they had gotten someone who actually like thought they were making a genuinely good movie to direct a movie they knew was going to be bad, or if they knew a movie was going to be bad and they were going for schlock and B movie kind of vibe, then make that script fit that vibe. And I felt like it was kind of like a weird, neither. It wasn't the best of both worlds. It was the worst of both worlds. So,
I
Slaughterhouse.
understand.
Don't watch it. It's not good.
Slaughterhouse. Then I have a prediction of what else could be in this bottom 5 based off of
Yes.
that one.
Yes.
So I'll be waiting to hear about that. Um, my number 3, Dill, and this is when we're kind of getting into like I'm kind of like upset about how disappointing
Gotcha.
this was to
Like
me.
you're
And
bummed.
I'm
Yeah.
and I'm more disappointed and I'm more afraid right now that I'm going to disappoint you because I feel like you saw this movie
Oh
and
no.
you really liked this movie and I feel like I even remember maybe at a point you had recommended this movie to me or these like movies, I should say. And
Oh.
I really didn't like Pearl.
Okay. Yeah. I watched. Well, I watched your TikTok, so I knew what your opinion of
Yeah.
Pearl was. Um. But I'll ask you in conjunction. Did you also not like X, or did you like one, not the other?
No. I liked X better
Okay.
because like I said about the thing about movies feeling conventional before, I actually appreciated about X because I feel like it took on a lot of like classic tropes from
Mm,
like old like, like old age horror movies that
yeah. Very 70s
like we don't like
Texas
we don't
Chainsaw Massacre vibes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Funny that you bring that movie up.
I know.
Um
I figured it was coming soon, but we'll talk about it.
And but no, that one I liked because I think I just liked the eclectic group of characters and I liked the dynamic between the kind of movie that we're making and like the kind of movie
Mhm.
that X is, which is a horror
Yeah.
movie. And there's a lot of good there's a lot of good gore in X that
I
like
love. Yeah. I
I'm
love the
not I'm
blood
not
on
a
the car lights. I love that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's because it's like it's not too much. It doesn't go overboard. It's just enough where you can
Mhm.
kind of like appreciate it and be like,
Yeah.
oh my, like Brittany Snow gets eaten by an alligator. Like
Yeah.
that's like I was like, wow, that's like
Mhm.
super. That's like
Yeah.
borderline camp
Pearl loves
almost.
killing people via alligator, but
Pearl loves killing people via alligator. I don't know. I just something about this one just like didn't click with me.
mhm.
And you'd think it would because it's about this girl who's like just like dying to get like off of her farm and like make it as like a big star.
Yeah.
And like this is not to discredit Mia Goth's performance in this at
Oh, she's
all. I
great.
still
Yeah.
think that she's an amazing actor and like she did a great job in this. I just like I don't know. It was something weird about the pacing and the
Mm.
disconnect between like I don't think that they were good at like showing this like multifacetedness of like Pearl wanting to be a star, but her also being a little like kind of
Off.
sketchy and like
Yeah.
having this dark side. I just don't think that um they did that well for me.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
sorry I
No,
got
it's
distracted
interesting.
because I was reading
No, I know.
Stacey's comment.
We'll get to that in a sec, but yeah,
Okay.
I agree. I think the style is what I like about Pearl, just for the same reasons you
Mhm.
liked X in terms of the
Mhm.
throwback. I like the throwback of Pearl, how it kind of opens almost like Wizard of Oz, where it's got that classic MGM kind of style title card, and
Yeah.
the vibe is a little more retro. But I also I get what you're saying. I also think because I did see Pearl first. Did you see Pearl first, or did you see X first?
No, I watched X first and then I
Okay.
watched Pearl.
So that's very interesting
Which
because
I
you saw Pearl as an old woman first, and then to see her
yes.
prequel, how she got
Yeah.
there. See, I was watching Pearl just as a character drama of this girl kind of going off the edge, and then to watch X after that to see her, kind of then still
Mm.
be stuck at that house as an old woman. I think it was a little more satisfying for
Yeah.
me there. But yeah,
Sure.
that it's definitely. I mean, it's A24, so it's got to be divisive because that's how most A24 horror movies are.
Yeah.
Chad does say I prefer Pearl over X, but he needs rewatches. And then Stacy does ask, should I talk to me or watch Trick or Treat? I haven't seen either. I mean, Trick or Treat, I think for Halloween is such like a great movie to watch on Halloween. It's a great anthology. And that's exactly what Chad says. It's a more Halloween movie. But
Yeah.
Talk to Me is better a horror for sure. And I think Talk to Me is such a great movie, but I still like Trick or Treat more as a movie. So take with that what you will. Have you seen either of those? You've
I've
seen Talk to Me.
seen I saw Talk to Me in theaters
Mhm.
and it was good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would personally watch Talk to
Yeah.
Me because that's
Yeah.
the only one I can speak on
Yeah.
in this equation,
There you
but
go. If you want the more
that's my rec.
spooky Halloween vibes or actual genuinely scary vibes, that's kind of the debate there. But yeah, anything else on Pearl? I mean,
I mean,
I agree to an extent. I agree of what you're saying. It's just I enjoyed that aspect.
yeah. I I liked Dill honestly watching X first and then going back to the prequel and like then
Because
seeing all like the
that's
kind
how
of
it was
East
released in theaters. Yeah.
yeah, and I liked like seeing like I liked seeing things in Pearl and being like, "Oh my god, and now that's going to be the car in the lake later in X," and like little things like that. Like I kind of liked like piecing together the
Right.
Easter eggs that come back later in that movie.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um but yeah, it was just and honestly like I hate when like movies feel long and Pearl
Mm.
just felt like a little long to
Yeah,
me
it's a
and it's
slow
not a
burn
long
for sure.
movie.
No, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
long,
a
but it
slow
is a
burn.
slow burn. Yeah. So.
I think maybe I'm not a slow burn girl.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's what I'm gathering from
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Number three is a movie that was disappointing. It's the worst movie I watched in this month, but it's less disappointing than the top two. If we're going by
Okay.
disappointment, should I save it for one because it's the worst, or put it at three because it's the third most disappointing?
No, go with your gut, Dill. If you have it here, then let's
Because
talk about it
the
now.
thing is, the expectations were lower for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, but there was a part of me that was thinking this could be a so bad it's good movie, and I
Mm,
genuinely do think more so than Slaughterhouse, there are like little, I almost said brilliant, but like little moments that are like
yeah,
teetering on that. But all in all, I was just disappointed. I was expecting to like be more entertained by how bad it was, whereas
sure.
like Slaughterhouse, I was just kind of like, ah. But what I will say is, it at least is an interesting take on a character. It's not a very good take, but I at least
Mm,
like how, it's public domain now, and I like how people are at least wanting to be creative with these properties. So I'll give it that. Like, I
mhm,
like how someone was like, I'm gonna make a horror film about Winnie the Pooh. It's not gonna be a good one, but like at least we can say, oh, let's do something different with art than like the same remakes we've been seeing of certain movies. And that's why my number two is higher, because it's like,
mm,
why retread the same thing over and over again when you can just like make something new? So I appreciated it for trying to make something new. It's not good, and it's not entertainingly bad either. So
mhm.
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, I don't need to say much more. Have you seen that one?
No.
Don't.
I heard Cinema Joe talk about it,
Oh,
and
Cinema
he
Joe.
was
I love
because he
Cinema
was
Joe.
like it
Yeah.
was some list he was making where he was like movies I will absolutely not be seeing this year, and it was like something like that where he said
Yeah.
that. I was like, that can't be real.
Yeah, and now
Um,
they're
but
making one
that's
for
hilarious.
Bambi, now that Bambi's in the public domain, so I can't wait to see what that's gonna be, because that doesn't sound like a recipe, but that sounds like it could be even worse in a good way, like more
Yeah,
entertainingly bad.
yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, the
It
masks are
sucks when
creepy. The masks are creepy.
I'm sure it sucks when something's bad and boring. Like if you're gonna be bad, at least entertain
Yeah,
me. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think it was still a little more entertained by Slaughterhouse because it was a sloth doing it, and the sloth is practical, whereas here it's just like
Mm.
these people in Winnie the Pooh masks. But like,
Ah.
I don't know. It wasn't even masks. It was like they were supposed to be the actual characters, but like it's very
Oh.
clearly masks. Like
Right.
Piglet had like a boar's head. I don't know. It was weird.
God, that sounds terrifying.
What's your number two, Kelsey?
My number 2 is and I was expecting I was gonna like this movie a lot better just because of, like, the cast, like, the concept of it, and I'm just gonna say it, I didn't like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah, not a fan either.
It was just something about it didn't click for me because I feel like it was falling in the same trap that like White Lotus does, where you kind of realize at a certain point in the season that like every single character is not redeemable, and then you
Okay,
just
yeah.
like don't have anyone to root for. Like
Mm,
it's like these group of like characters that are written to represent like our generation, like these
yeah,
young like kids addicted to their phones, like talking in slang to each other, and like but they're all like upper class except for one of them, Maria Bakalova, who saves this movie, carries this movie on her back, God bless her.
she's really good in that. Yeah,
um and like just like the way they talk about things and the way they're talking to each other, I guess it's like it's supposed to make you annoyed, but
it's
it
supposed to be
was just
cringe.
like
Yeah, for sure.
right. And then I will say I did appreciate the twist at the end, which I won't say because this movie is more recent,
Because it's a
but
murder mystery, but the reveal of how the
right.
character who died. Yeah,
Because it can easily fall into the trap of like there's this genre of scary movies that's like a group of people get together at a house and one person it's like and then there were none. And Agatha Christie, it's like
mm,
everyone's trying to rewrite that
right.
story in some way. And at a certain point it just gets old. But I will say about Bodies, Bodies, Bodies that it has such a great twist that like it doesn't fall into the same trap,
Mm.
which I
Yeah,
appreciated.
yeah.
But for the most part, I was just annoyed
Yeah,
watching
I
that
think that, yeah,
movie.
and I think that's definitely the goal. I think it depends also where you are, like what generation you are, and how much you're exposed to it in real life. Because I think working especially in like the restaurant industry and being around people older and younger, it's like it feels a little bit more put on. Like, do people really talk like that? And the answer is yes, people actually do. But it's also like I don't know. It's a little too extreme, I think, in that case to make a point. But again, people in other
Yeah.
generations may see that as a really good critique of younger culture. But it's also like you want to find those characters that you can like grasp onto and follow and actually like relate to, and it's hard to do
Yeah.
that in this film. And if you do relate to these characters, it's kind of like a bad slap in the face, like, oh shit, this is really what we're like. And
Right.
that's what I was worried. But Carly, actually, she just got here, just got off work. Happy Halloween, happy Halloween,
Happy
Carly.
Halloween.
Chad's watching Hocus Pocus, yes, starring my buddy Larry. But I will also say Carly drafted Rachel Sennot's performance last night from Bodies, 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 and that is a great performance. I think she's
That is
great
a good
too.
performance. Yes,
Upper
I
middle
agree with that.
class, upper middle class. Like, oh, she's so good. All right, my number 2, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where Winnie the Pooh at least did something interesting with the property, even if it wasn't a good movie. This film, I think, just retreaded kind of the worst cliches of its genre, and that's The Exorcist Believer. I saw this one in theaters.
Ah.
I wasn't scared, which was a problem. And then also, I think the use of legacy characters in this movie kind of made it even worse. I love Ellen Burstyn. I love Linda Blair. But like adding those characters to this movie just didn't need to happen, because what they do with those characters is almost a slap in the face to fans of the original. And I know a lot of people were saying the same thing about Luke Skywalker in the new Star Wars movies, and Laurie Strode in the new Halloween movies. But I think even then, those characters have interesting developments. Whereas these characters, like, they didn't really put them in an interesting place. And a lot of it is like hearsay. It's like the other characters talking about their characters, but we don't see a lot of those characters like actually doing anything. So it's a lot about just kind of talking about their legacy rather than actually seeing the growth or development. And I also think it just has like those like problems that a lot of legacy sequels do, where because it's in that universe, it's restricted in a way where, like, when these girls are possessed, immediately what's her name, Anne Dowd from Hereditary, she's great, but her character is immediately like, oh, this is a possession, yeah, this happened in the 70s, we need a priest. And it's like, so this is just something that just happens in this universe now, that like, oh, it's just an exorcism, no big deal, we'll get a priest. And I'm like, that's such a big deal that, like, now because you're restricted to being an exorcist film, it's just like, oh yeah, it's just an exorcism, we'll just get a priest. Like, it's just so nonchalant. I feel like that should have bigger stakes in a movie, but because it's in this universe, there's no stakes, you know. It's just like, oh, there's an exorcism, and then once we get to the exorcism, it's boring. It's like not fun to watch. It's just a kind of just a bland, boring exorcism. And and the reason it's disappointing to me is because I haven't seen the other Exorcist sequels, and I think just because David Gordon Green, I actually really liked Halloween Ends, I actually had hope that this could be better, and because they spent so much money on this, I was like, I think this could be good. And the trailers were not good, but I was like, it's a trailer, you know, I'm not going to judge it based on the trailer alone. And then the reviews were bad, and I got a little worried, and then I saw it, and I was like, yeah, this isn't good. So it was just a shame. But I'm not a huge fan of the original Exorcist as is. But watching this, it made me appreciate the original a lot more. So I guess that's a good thing.
I'm sure. Yeah, Dill. I mean, the original Exorcist is just like one of those movies that I walked away and I just felt so gross after it that I was like, oh, Exorcist, like Resurrection, whatever it's called, not doing that, because with this level of like today's like effects and like whatever we're doing, I'm like, it's gonna be 10 times worse. So I'm just not signing myself up for that. So you're just cementing the fact that I will not be seeing this movie. So thank you.
What is your number one most disappointing movie? Did I allude to it earlier?
My number one most disappointing movie is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I thought that movie was a mess. It was chaos. It was like so irritating, and like I don't know. I just like people like talk about this movie like it's one of like the like I guess because it's a classic. I don't know.
I think that's why I think it's because it like kind of was the first of its kind, and people have built on it better. I do like it because I also love the atmosphere of it, like the hot blazing sun and the griminess to it. But if you're not into that, like, it's a very grimy. It's kind of like we were just saying with Exorcism. It makes you feel bad. Like, and Carly doesn't love it either, so she's on team.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I thought I was going to be alone here, but I don't know. I just feel like people are viewing this movie with like rose-colored glasses or like nostalgia attached to it, where like I watched it for the first time ever in 2023 with fresh eyes, and I just thought that it was absolute chaos and just so messy and kind of hard to follow at some points, and just got so weird in the middle, and then obviously everyone in horror movies makes bad decisions that you're yelling at the
it's the
screen, like,
of,
why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But like I was doubly yelling 10 times, like times that by 10 during this movie, where I just thought everyone was so stupid for no reason.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
okay.
don't know. I thought it was gonna just be like a little bit better, or just like solid, and it
Mm.
wasn't. So
Yeah,
I was the
Stacy
most
says,
disappointed with that.
yeah, don't fuck with chainsaws. Period. I ran out of the Chucky house. She went to the Halloween Horror Nights at Universal
Oh,
because there was a dude with
would
a
never.
chainsaw at the end. Yep, nope, whatever.
Nope.
Um,
Would not, could not.
nope, nope, nope. My number one most disappointing just came out a few days ago. Five Nights at Freddy's. I yeah, I'm not
I'm
gonna talk a
so
lot about it
sad
because I
to
know you're
hear
excited about it.
this.
I was gonna
Okay.
honestly wait for you to see it, Kels, but I also was like,
Yeah.
wait, it's on Peacock. I'll just watch it there because I heard it was getting bad reviews. So I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to
Ah.
waste my. It's not
Well,
wasting money because I'm A-list, but it's like I don't want to trek all the way to a theater if it's not gonna be good. But again, I didn't want to like
right.
be swayed by the public opinion, so I was like, let me watch it on Peacock, and if it's great, I'll watch it again with Kelsey in theaters. But I watched it, and it was not the worst movie I watched. It's actually probably better than the other four I mentioned. I think it's definitely better than Slaughterhouse and Winnie the Pooh. It might have been better
Mm.
than Renfield or Exorcist Believer, but it's the most disappointing because I think it did have the most potential based on the trailer. I'm not a gamer. I didn't play the games, so I feel like if you played the games, it might work more for you. But I just can't, after watching the movie, be like, "Oh wow, I really want to play those games,"
Mm.
because I don't really understand what the story of the movie was really going for. It became this family drama about a kid whose brother was abducted when he was younger, and how he has his own custody battle he's facing to like get custody of his sister or whatever. Like, it was not about the animatronic killer animatronics in the like pizzeria for much of it. I mean, it's like that's what I want
Oh.
to see.
Mm-hmm.
I want the night at the museum, but the museum pieces come alive and kill you. Like that's what I wanted. But again, I haven't played the
Right.
game, so I don't know what I was expecting. But the trailer just was very
Yeah.
misleading. So I was disappointed. The designs of the creatures are scary, but it's like, I just didn't.
Yeah.
But
That's crazy, Dill. I did hear Cinema Joe talk about this one today, and he said that it was getting bad reviews, but the audience score was doing
yes,
really well. So
and I think
maybe
it's
it
because
just
fans of
has
the
kind of like
game
a cult
like it. Yeah,
following
yeah, I
that's,
think that's what it is.
kind of
Yeah.
like good review bombing it, or whatever
Mhm.
the reverse of bombing something is.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. So,
so
you want to transition to our best now? We got about 20 minutes. Yeah, let's talk
yeah,
about our best.
absolutely.
What's your? You want me to
Um,
start with five? That way we can end with you.
oh yeah, sure. You can
Cool.
go.
So my number five best is an old. I shouldn't say old. I guess it's old. From the 50s, I think. Black and white movie called House on Haunted Hill. It's like an old
Mm.
like kind of murder mystery,
Mm.
spooky. It's like a slasher and a murder mystery. Kind of like Bodies, where people die as it goes, but they're also trying to find the killer. And the reveals at the end are genuinely some of the most inspired reveal twists I've ever seen. Where I was like genuinely like, how did I not think of that? It's so well done. There are great jump scares, and I think just the atmosphere of like this kind of castle in black and white, and kind of like it's thunder and lightning outside. Like I love that vibe. When I think of like Halloween, I either think of like leaves on the street and kids trick or treating, or I think of like a dark, spooky castle on a dark and stormy night. And like this is very much that latter. And then Vincent Price is also in this movie, and he voices Ratigan in Great Mouse Detective. He's got that like low beaming British voice, and I think his performance in this is so fun. So if you want a really good, like deliciously fun, atmospheric murder mystery that's like old
Mm.
fashioned, it gives you those kind of old classic spooky vibes, then I would suggest that. And Stacy does say the 50s is old, and I watched that in the 13 Ghosts as a kid with my dad. That's why I'm like this. I love that. So yeah, I'm a fan of House on Haunted Hill. I'm assuming you haven't seen it. It's not Haunted on Hill House,
No.
it's House on Haunted Hill. So I
Yes.
highly recommend it. Yeah, so that was my number five. What's your number
Well,
five?
Dill, I'll definitely have to check that out. Thank you for
Mhm.
telling me about that
You're
one.
welcome.
Um, my number five, that I walked away and I was really pleasantly surprised. I heard a lot of mixed reviews about this movie going into it, but
Mm.
I was gonna watch it as unbiasedly as possible, and that was The Babadook.
Yes, that was on my top five last year.
Um, I just like I just like really liked that movie. It was kind of irritating at sometimes, but you kind of like walk away. This was the complete opposite of me walking away from Donnie Darko, because at the end of the Babadook, I literally turned to James and I was like, you know what? I get it, because I think it's like literally all a metaphor. And I love I don't want to spoil the Babadook,
Yeah.
but I think it's just like all a metaphor for like mental health, or like
Mhm.
depression, and like
Yeah.
dealing with that,
Especially as a
and
single
like
mom. Yeah.
and like this, yeah, exactly, the single mom and the kid, and like, she's forcing him to like take these pills at some point. She's like, take these pills and like everything will be okay. But it's like, with mental health, you need more than like a pill. You need to like associate, combine that with like talking to someone, and like, all these like great things. And I just love how at the end, like the ending message, without trying to spoil it as much as possible, was like, these things just don't go away. You have to manage
Mhm.
them. And that's the kind of message that like I walked away with this one. So I really liked it a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, it's great. I talked about it last year, so I for the sake of time, I won't ramble about how much I love it, but I love it. And Essie
Mhm.
Davis is so good in the lead role. I believe that's her name.
Mhm.
Babadook broke me. Yes, it broke me too, Stacey. All right, my number four is a movie by one of my favorite Austrian directors. His name is Michael Haneke. This is one of the only movies with subtitles, like international films I watch, and that's called
Mm.
Funny Games. So basically, like to set it up, the premise is like this woman and this guy have like a summer house. Well, I guess it's a whole family. Yeah, they have this summer house, and this woman gets a knock at the door, and these two neighbors come by asking to borrow eggs. And
Mm.
she's never seen these people before, and they say they're staying with the neighbor next door. And she's like, "Oh, okay, sure, I'll give you these eggs." And then they basically hold this family hostage and make them compete in these games to free themselves. And when I tell you, it is one of the most haunting and unnerving movies, and the way it ends, there's one moment, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but a kill happens, and then immediately a character does something that I've never seen in any movie ever before, and it's just so frightening. It's one of those movies like I
Mm.
can't talk about because it's all spoilers. But if you want a good like
Mm.
home invasion movie that's also international and also just kind of like a good slow burn, this is definitely one of them. So
That
I
kind of
definitely
sounds
recommend
like
Funny Games.
a little bit like The Strangers to me, Dale. Have you ever
Never
seen
seen
that
that,
one?
but yeah,
Oh, well, it's kind of the same premise. Like these people come to this house and it ends up being like a situation where they're, trying to
gotcha.
kill them.
Cool.
Um,
So number four, right? Four.
my number 4, and I just like love these types of movies. Speaking about foreign films, mine is also a foreign film. Train to Busan.
Yes, Kelsey. Yes.
Loved this one. Well, I
Yeah.
love a zombie movie. I love
Yeah.
anything involving
Just so
zombies
good.
because
So good.
the tension is so high, the stakes are so high. It all takes place on a train, so it was very like Snowpiercer or like
Mhm.
Bullet
Oh
Train,
yeah.
which like
Gilgamesh.
I Gilgamesh. Oh, Gilgamesh was in it, which was the best surprise ever. Um, and it was just like these movies just like constantly keep you on the edge of your seat, so you're constantly entertained. You don't know what's going to happen next, and you're constantly trying to like outrun these zombies. And I just think that it was so great and so fun. And
Mhm.
the ending, I was very nervous that they were going to pull Night of the Living Dead on me
Right.
and like have these characters that like survive the whole night just to be, taken out by just like something random. But the ending is what it is, so it was good.
Yeah. No, I definitely love it, and I think it's also one of those movies that, like, isn't necessarily, like, restricted to Halloween. Like, I feel like you can watch this any
Mhm.
time of the year, and it's just gonna
Yeah.
be a blast. Like, I could and it's not even that scary to where I mean, it's scary, but not, like, in a way where you could just, like, show it to a friend and worry that they're gonna be too scared. You can I think anyone can watch this and enjoy it, because
Yeah.
it's more of an action film
100%.
than anything else. It's so good, so good.
Mhm.
My number 3 is a movie that actually came out this year, so not all the movies this year were bad.
Okay.
And it's probably my new favorite. I'm gonna put an asterisk here because there's a movie that came out a few years ago that I also love about alien invasions, but it's called No One Will Save You. It's on Hulu. Um, this
Oh!
is one I know when you needed to replace one of your movies, we toyed around this idea, but I
Yes.
love this. It's Caitlin Dever who says 5 words in this whole movie.
Oh my
It's basically
gosh.
she's a seamstress. She lives alone, and you don't really know what her past is all about. But these aliens basically come to Earth and they abduct. And she basically is like an invasion of the body snatchers type thing. Like the
Mhm.
town starts becoming like possessed by these aliens, and she has to basically hide from them and it kind of unlocks this part of her past and her grief and her guilt, and you start to kind of see her backstory creep in as the film goes along, and how the film ends is
Mm.
so interesting. But for me, it's the film. And when we talk about like our 5 scares, and I know we're running low on time, so at the end we'll kind of rattle them off quickly, but like of all the scares, like this movie had the most scares for me in terms of genuine like
Mm.
moments where I literally had to hide and cower behind my hands, because I feel like I've seen a lot of like heavy hitter scary movies, whereas this month was a lot of like atmospheric horror and stuff like that. But this one like genuinely scared the living daylights out of me often, and I think it's just so well done. It's just such a solid 90-minute banger, and I think it's definitely probably my favorite horror film of the year. It's either that or Skinamarink or Talk to Me. Like those three are all really good, but like damn, No One Will Save You is so good. I really recommend it. It's just so well done. It's just so well designed. The sound, if you watch this with a regular TV, you're doing it wrong. You need to put in headphones and just like let the sound kind of just like soak into your eardrums, or you need to see it in the theater. But of course, Disney had no faith in it and dropped it on Hulu and didn't advertise it, so it's not going to be here. But it's one of those movies where the sound is so integral, because there's sounds you wouldn't even pick up if you were watching on a TV, even if you have like the best sound system in the world, because it's like so faint and so subtle, and I love the sound. It's like Quiet Place in terms of the use of sound, like how much I love the sound design. So one of my favorites of this year. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Stacey. Putting No One Will Save You on my watch list. And while we're recapping, Train to Busan is an incredible zombie film. Yes, it is. Funny Games is interesting as hell. There we go. So yeah, Kels, I know you haven't seen that one yet, but put it on your list.
Funny enough, Dill. Well, first of all, I can do a few minutes past 8,
Okay.
so we don't have to stress. Because I know I said hard out before, but my friends are being lenient for me because I've already pushed. I know it's Jess and Candace.
Oh, Jess, Candace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Live, laugh, love them.
So Chad, I give it another go, but put headphones in this time. I'm kidding. No One Will Save You was okay. I didn't love that one. That's fine. Not everyone loves everything, but it's fine. I can enjoy it. Yeah, I freaking love it.
Funnily enough, Dill, you had recommended this one for me when I found out that I couldn't watch 28 Days Later anywhere. Ooh. They only had 28 weeks available.
This is why
whatever's going on with that,
because it's not able to be streamed anywhere for rights issues. So if you have a 28 Days Later copy, hold on to it, because it's going to be worth a lot.
Yeah. And so I had to scratch that off my 31 days, and you had pitched this to me, but I ultimately ended up going with the Black Phone, just because I felt like that had a lot more talk around it when it first came out.
It also was the more scary movie to watch. Yeah. And I hadn't seen No One Will Save You yet, so I was like, maybe not, because I don't know if it's actually scary or not. It is.
Yeah. But I will definitely give that one a go now that you've given it such a raving review, for sure. My number 3.
Oh, I thought that was your number 3. Sorry.
Oh, no. Which one? The Black Phone?
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying.
Oh, no. I like the Black Phone. I thought that it was interesting. I thought that it was cool. Yeah, I like that one.
What's your number 3?
But my actual number 3 is just one that I was like just terrified watching it the whole time. Just like scary. Like if you just want to be scared, like watch Barbarian. Yeah. That is a scary movie. It takes but it's definitely not your conventional horror movie, because it takes so many twists. Like the beginning starts and you think you know where the movie's going, and it takes an entirely different turn. And then in the third act, it takes another entirely different turn. Like this one keeps you on your toes the entire time. And I just appreciated a movie that can just do some real good, tasteful and just unexpected scares. Cause I feel like as, someone who dabbles in watching horror movies every now and again, it's hard to not do something that feels too repetitive or not original. So, but this one I felt like it was totally original and so cool. Yeah. And I want to give that one a rewatch, but I don't, because it was so terrifying.
Well, I'll tell you though, the first time I watched it, I was a little underwhelmed, because I was like, I get what they're going for, but I feel like the whole time I was so what's the twist? What's the twist? What's the twist? Because I was like, this can't be it. That now that I know what is going on when I rewatch it, I'm like, okay, yep. And it's such an interesting, kind of commentary on cancel culture as well. Justin Long's character plays the absolute scum of the earth in this movie, and he's so good at playing that. And I love kind of where it builds to, and kind of some of those ending sequences, and having to show that metaphor for a man trying to cover his ass when he's guilty in a woman's world type thing. But the monster in that movie is so good. I love it. My family, it's a Randazzo. If you go to the Randazzo house, you will hear my sister or mother or dad say because we're all obsessed with it. And my sister, it's her favorite horror film right now. Like she shifts. She like becomes obsessed with a certain horror film every time she watches
Yeah.
one. Like she was obsessed with Megan, and then she watched Barbarian. Now she's obsessed with Barbarian. She'll probably watch something else and become obsessed with that. But Bebe is our favorite thing to say in the Randazzo household now. Great
Love
film.
that.
This is my number 2 now. I'm going to talk about David Cronenberg's The Fly, which I think is one of the more interesting body horrors I've seen. So basically, the premise is that the scientist is like trying to do this cloning experiment, and then he goes into his own machine because he's got an ego. It's all about male toxic masculinity, but he goes into the machine and he's like, I'm going to do it now to myself. And turns out a little housefly accidentally flies in the machine, and he doesn't realize. And then he merges DNA with this fly. So throughout the movie, you see Jeff Goldblum, who plays the lead guy, slowly turn into a human-sized fly. And it's a remake of the original film. The
Yuck.
original film, he kind of has like certain body parts are flies, certain are human. But like in this one, it's like, no, he like actually like slowly starts to turn into a actual fly. And because it's the 80s, everything's practical. So like all the goo, all the pus, all the hairs, they're all practical. And I love that. It's so icky and gooey and gross. But that's why I love this movie. And I think it's a really great kind of commentary on like terminal illness and like dealing with a family member who's dying of a disease that you can't cure, because this man is slowly decaying. He's gonna die because he's turning into a fucking fly. And you have to see Gina Davis's character, who's also great in Grey's Anatomy, have to like kind of like, you know, have this moment where she's like kind of almost preparing for the end with him. And it kind of is a parallel to terminal illness, which I think is very interesting. So I highly recommend The Fly if you haven't seen it. It's a good one.
You know, Dill, in my brain, The Fly and The Thing are the same movie, and they're not, because I just watched The Thing today. And I was like, this has nothing to do with The Fly. And I was like, oh, that's because that movie is called The Fly.
And they're both from a similar time period. And they're both body horror using practicality. There's a lot of great body horror in The Thing. It's gross.
The Thing was crazy. Oh my
crazy.
God.
Yeah. So what's your number 2, Kels?
My number 2 is just like a movie that like I knew was gonna be good, but like how good it is at and the scale of like what was accomplished with this movie was like I mean, like it's just such a well-made movie because this man just truly never misses, and it's Jordan Peele's Nope. Which
I
is
knew you were gonna
just...
say one of 2 names, so Peele was one of the 2 names I was thinking.
Okay.
I'm interested to see if the other one's number 1, but yeah, Peele.
Yeah.
Nope. Another alien invasion movie. Kind of.
Another alien invasion movie that is just done so differently
Not
than
aliens, but
any.
UFOs.
Yeah, then so differently than any alien movie like I've ever seen. Like what alien movies did I watch this time? Oh, I watched Alien, first of all, which was another movie that I liked a lot. I think it's right at number 6 outside the bottom 5. I really did like that one a lot. And I watched Signs, M. Night Shyamalan. And this one was just so different. And I think my biggest takeaway from this movie is that the design of the creature in this movie is just so interesting. And it doesn't look
like a manta ray. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a giant stingray at some points. And it doesn't look bad. It looks great. Like the visual effects are so good. And because
the sound,
I think it's yes, and the sound is so great, and like trying to figure out like what's going on is great. And like I loved like the use of like the cinematographer guy and like the guy that they meet at like the Best Buy in the movie that they like tag along to like help them with this like alien creature that's like, you know, invading their horse farm.
Yeah.
And
I love the little fake out of when you think it's actually the aliens. Cause like up until then you just know there's a UFO, but you don't know if anything has come on Earth. And Daniel Kaluuya's in like the farmhouse and it's the lights are off and he sees like the glowing.
God. Yes. Yeah.
I love that fake out because it's just kids in masks. It's
yes.
Because we forget sometimes at Halloween, like kids like to dress around and goof off as in masks.
Yeah.
But it's that moment is just so good.
Chad goes, what movie are we on? Oh,
yeah.
No.
There we go. Sorry,
yes,
Chad.
no.
I just saw that now. Yeah. So good.
And Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer do a great job in this movie. They're both like powerhouses in this movie, and it's just such a different character that I've seen Daniel Kaluuya play, and he just like he bodies every single role. He's also a man that never misses in my eye. So
yeah, and I also love how it's like a commentary also for animal abuse and like the idea that like you know
The
with Gordy.
monkey.
Yeah,
Oh
with the
my
monkey. But it's
god.
also like kind of a parallel to the idea that like, these UFOs and like trying to tame them and make a spectacle of an animal. And Stephen Yeun, who's
Yes,
so
yes.
obsessed because he survived this childhood trauma, he's turned that trauma into obsession, and now he needs
Yes.
to like tame this giant beast, when it's like, didn't you learn the first time you don't tame
Right.
a beast? Like that
Right,
whole
right,
parallel
right.
is so interesting too.
There's
um,
layers to this
so
movie
many
for
layers. I
sure,
mean,
and
there's
it's
layers in
great.
all the peels. It's a banana peel. You peel away the layers, quite literally. Jordan peel away the layers. Yeah,
Oh
every time I
god.
rewatch it, it comes closer to Get Out, and I think someday it'll become my favorite Jordan Peele movie. Like I just think it's a masterpiece. A masterpiece.
I think my favorite of the 3 is definitely Us.
Ooh, okay.
Just solely because of Lupita Nyong'o. Like,
Yeah.
she is, like, I mean, there's just no words to
Hey,
describe her
guess who drafted
performance
her
in that
last night?
movie.
I did, or yesterday, or today, I guess. It's like ogres have layers. Yes,
Yes.
Chad. Yes, Chad. Um,
As you should do.
yeah. Number
What's
one is
your
a movie. Yeah,
Oh, what's
number
your
one's
number
a
1?
movie you're not gonna like when you ever watch it, if you watch it.
Okay.
It's a very Dill movie of like, anyone else is probably gonna watch this and be like, "What the fuck was that?" Or just like look at it. It's kind of like how
See,
I
that's
Love
what I was
Kingdom.
going for with picking Renfield, because I feel like you pick, like, really obscure movies to love,
Right.
so I thought that might be
But not even
for
obscure,
you,
because
but
it's like not conventionally loved. Those who love it, and a lot of people do
yeah.
love it. It's David Lynch's Eraserhead, which is about this like guy who doesn't,
Let me
I guess,
Google
doesn't want to
this.
be a dad, or he's very insecure. He's a very socially awkward person, and then it turns out his girlfriend, who he may or may not even live with, had a baby. Like didn't isn't even pregnant, but like had a baby, and the baby is basically like a
Oh.
little ET. Like the
Oh,
baby looks like a little
good.
alien ET. It's almost like a mix of the xenomorph from Alien and ET, but it's like a little baby version. It's got little teeth, and it's totally practical. It's like a little puppet, and the whole time he's like caring for this puppet, and it's like causing him this distress, and it's like a psychological horror film about parenting that like it's just so fucked up and so twisted, and the way it ends, and the kind of the again, like The Fly, it's got gooey, gory body effects, body horror
I'm
effects.
sure.
I really love it, and it's funny because like this one and The Fly are my number one and two. So I guess body horror was just like my thing this year. But yeah, it's a much grosser than ET. Yes, I agree, Stacey. It was more so comparing what the little baby looks like, and then Chad says it's a masterpiece, but oh so weird and terrifying, super unpleasant. Yep, I agree with all that. It's very unpleasant, but I think that's what's fun about it. It's kind of like a Skinamarink thing where I want to see your
Mm,
reaction to it, but I know you're not gonna
mm.
like love it unless Skinamarink is your number one and you're gonna pull a fast one on me. But like it's one of those movies where it
Who
just leaves
knows?
you thinking, and you're like, hey, this is just so original. So I appreciate it for that. It's like no one else could have made this but David Lynch, and it's wacky, and I loved it.
Dill, can I ask you a question? How do you, like, find a movie like this? Like, is this
Well,
word of mouth? Like, did
well,
someone
David
recommend
Lynch
this
is
to
like,
you?
yeah, David Lynch is a very like well-renowned like artsy filmmaker. Like he made The Elephant Man, and he made the original
Mm.
Dune. He made Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet. Like he's a very well-renowned filmmaker, and this is his like first film. This is like one that it's on the Criterion Collection. Like it's like a very like artsy film school type movie that like a lot of
Mm.
like that kind of community knows. It's very well known in like the niche horror kind of community. Yeah, he made Twin Peaks. Duh, I forgot about that.
The Fablemans?
What?
The Fablemans is under his name?
Oh, he's in the Fablemans. He's an
Oh.
actor in the Fablemans.
Oh,
Fablemans is
okay.
Steven Spielberg. But
That's
yeah,
what I
so
thought.
yeah.
I was like, "What?"
So he has a role in the Fablemans, but it's just like this is just a very yeah, like to the modern like mainstream audiences, this probably isn't very well known, but it's got like a pretty large fan base because I think it is a cult hit. Yeah, and Stacey says Corey and I are working our way through Lynch's filmography. Very cool. Yeah,
Mm.
David Lynch is a very obscure filmmaker and a very polarizing one, but I feel like yeah, I've always heard this is a great one. Actually, our friend Ben Buffard brought me into like introduced me to David Lynch, at least as a concept of a person, and then for picture this, Chad and I finally watched The Elephant Man, which is a film he made that and I was nominated for Best Picture. So it was always on my radar. But some of these films, it's kind of weird how I stumbled upon them. Like Possession is a movie I hadn't heard of until like everyone was watching it last year on Letterboxd and was like, "You got to see this, you got to see this." I was like, "Okay," and
Mm.
then
Oh, right,
like
Letterbox.
yeah,
That's probably where you
yeah,
get
Letterboxd does a lot for it. And then like movies like The
Yeah.
Invitation, I just watch because it's like, oh, I love Jennifer's Body, so I'm gonna watch another movie by that director. So sometimes I'll branch out by directors, but I don't
Mm.
know. Anyway, Kels, what's your number one movie that you watched this month?
Okay, my number 1 movie,
Aside
which
from
is
the
the
Eras tour, yeah.
Aside from the Eras tour, which is not, which is just scary amazing, if anything.
Right.
Um, which is, it's gonna sound ridiculous saying it, but I had never seen this movie, and so you
Oh,
have to keep in mind, like, something that I had that's been recognized as, like, one of the best movies of all time, I was just introduced to this month. So, I honestly, I went into this movie, not expecting it to, like, really hold up all these years. I was thinking that, like, okay, maybe it's a little, outdated, maybe, it's gonna feel too, like, a movie about men created by men, like, where one of those movies I just had one of those problems with. And yes, it is Jaws. That was definitely my number one watch,
yep.
because I was like, damn, like, this is a classic for a reason. Like, this is like this movie was great. Like, it has some great scares in it. It has some great, like, stories. It's got awesome dialogue. The shark, I could not believe that this movie was made in the year 1976, right?
77. Well, made in
77.
76, released in 70. No, sorry.
Okay.
Released in 75, made in 74. But yeah, mid 70s.
Okay. But we got there eventually. But I was like, "Oh my god, like, this is it was just great." It was just, like, super super great, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And
There's not like a lot to
yeah.
say because it's so, so good.
No,
But
literally.
yeah, like the idea that like when the music's there, you know the shark's coming, and at first you're
Mhm.
like, why are they telling us the shark's coming? Isn't it better to be
Right.
surprised? But then when they don't use the music, or wait, is the shark
Yeah,
there or
yeah,
not? You
yeah.
know, like that's
Yeah.
such a great device. I love that so much.
Mhm.
It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's my second, actually now it's my third favorite Spielberg, just behind E.T. and The Fablemans. But like when you were talking
Mm.
about like this director don't miss, I thought you were talking about him, Steven
Steven
Spielberg.
Spielberg.
But then I was like, it's either
He
Spielberg or
also doesn't
Peele.
miss.
But like, yeah, it was your top two. It's Spielberg and Peele.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of influence of Jaws in Nope, so that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just so amazing. I love it. I love the scene where Quint's talking about the Alabama, the USS Alabama, and
Yes. Yep,
and
yep,
they
yep.
the scene starts and they're all on separate ends of the boat. And by the end of that scene, they're all sitting at the table closer together, and it shows the bond visually without even saying it. Oh, it's so good. It's such a
Mhm.
masterpiece. Okay, quickly, we're gonna talk about our just like the five scariest moments in these movies. I'll go first. I'm just gonna rattle them off just because I didn't watch a lot of movies with like jump scares or any like big like da 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 moments. So it's
Mhm.
all like little things that got under my
Okay.
skin more so. So
Sure.
one is from a very new film Saw X, which I really enjoyed.
Ooh.
One
Ugh.
of the traps, a guy has to literally like remove a piece of his brain and give himself an open brain surgery with one hand. Like he's like tied to a machine and he has to like cut open his the top of his head and like perform a small brain surgery and like suck out like blood from his brain or whatever. I don't know. It grossed me out so much I couldn't watch. So like that's my number five. My number four is from a movie called Possession, which Chad says is wild.
Mm.
Holy shit. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, kind of wild, and I couldn't even explain it to you. It would take 20 minutes to explain what that movie's about. But there's a scene where a woman is like in like an alleyway, just kind of like literally screaming and thrashing around and like vomiting and pissing and like just kind of like Reagan in The Exorcist, but she's just doing it and just screaming and going wild. That
Mm.
moment unsettled me. My number three, in Funny Games, the movie I talked about earlier, there's a moment where a character is looking for her dog who has been killed. Sadly, I'll spoil that. The dog has been killed, but she doesn't know
I'd
where it
rather
is.
know.
She doesn't know where it is, and she's looking for it. And they're playing a game of hotter and colder. The guy who killed the dog is like, hotter, colder, hotter, hotter. And then he turns around to the camera and winks at the camera. It is the scariest thing I've seen in a while.
That
Where like
sounds so eerie.
yeah, he turns around and winks to the camera, and I'm like, oh, that is freaking scary. And then my top two are actually from the same movie. That's No One Will Save You. There is
Mm.
the first scene where yes, Chad, I hate that part because of the dog death, but the wink at the camera is the scary part. So when we're talking about our top five scariest moments, it's the wink that is like so scary. It's breaking the fourth wall. But
Yeah.
in No One Will Save You, the first scary moment is when you first realize the aliens are there, and like Caitlin Deaver looks very briefly, and you just see very quickly the alien just run downstairs. So she's at the top of the
Mhm.
stairs and she's
Mhm.
looking
Mhm.
down. The door is open, and then she sees the alien run from like one room to the kitchen, and she's up above it. That's just so scary. You're like, oh my god, there's an alien in the house. And then the second one is after she kills one of the aliens, she goes outside and she's like breathing, and she's like, phew, okay, alien's
Yeah.
dead. And the
Yeah.
camera's focused on her, but in the very background, you see these two glowing eyes start to peer out from behind her garage, and then you realize there's another one on top of the garage, and then the alien comes out from behind the garage, and it's got like big giant. It looks like a giant tarantula. It's got big legs. I was like, that is crazy. So those are my
Oh,
top two scares. Those were genuine jump scares where it wasn't even a jump scare in the traditional way. Like there was no noise
yeah.
with it, but it was just like I jumped out of my seat. I was like, ah, there's an alien. That shit scared me. It's kind of like that scene in Nope. But yeah,
Mm.
those are my top five scares. So the brain surgery, the possession alleyway scene, the wink to the camera in Funny Games, and then those two alien moments in No One Will Save You are the two scariest, five scariest moments from film that I saw this month. Kelsey, what are your five scariest moments from these movies you watched?
Okay, so these are moments that certainly made me jump, like full body jump,
Mhm.
face gets covered. I
You
was
can
I
watch all
was
on TikTok, people. She left the jump scares in there for sure.
yeah,
I
the
think I
good
might know what your number one is, but go ahead.
All right, so we'll get there when we get there.
Because I
You can
commented on it. I loved it. I was like, oh,
Yeah, the good news about, doing this TikTok series that I do is that when I was looking for the top 5 scariest moments, I was like, "Okay, when do I have a full body, like,
yeah.
convulsion at the screen?" So, my number 5, and obviously going from, like, least scary to most scary, is the ending of Paranormal Activity from
Never seen
2007
it.
when, so basically, like, it's about this couple that just like moved into this, and they didn't just move into this house. It actually has nothing to do with the house. It has something to do with like the wife's pass and like whatever. And basically at the end, like one of them gets just like thrown at the camera when you're least expecting it, and it made me jump.
Mm.
um oh, Barbarian, just like Barbarian as a whole is just like so scary, but like I think the specific moment that got me first was when the reveal of the bebe lady in the tunnel, when she first is just like
Yes.
screams literally in your face and
Yeah.
then
That comes out of the
does
shadows.
something
Yeah.
crazy. Exactly. Oh, those tunnels are so scary.
Yeah.
I would
And then like
never.
right before that, Bill Skarsgård kind of coming in on all fours. He's like, help me, help me. And you're like,
No, literally.
yeah.
No, I would have been done in that moment.
Yeah.
Tess, she stuck around for too long in that
Mm.
movie. I would have been so done. Okay. There is a really scary jump scare in Insidious, and I thought that this movie was gonna hold up a little bit more. I
Mm.
feel like people usually have, had a lot of good things to say when these movies were at their prime. So I was expecting a little bit better of this one, but
Mm.
there is this really good jump scare that they get you with, and it's basically like, the characters are having a conversation at the table, and they're doing that thing where they like cut back and forth while they're just having this conversation, and then like mid cut, it's when you literally least expect it, it cuts back to Patrick Wilson's character, and there's just this red demon
Darth
face
Maul. Yeah.
behind him, literally Darth Maul. And oh my god, whoo, that one, like I had like shivers down my body. Like I needed
Mm.
to recuperate for like 30 seconds
Right.
after I watched that one.
Cool.
Um oh, you're going to love this one, Dill. Um the My number 2 jump scare of the season was definitely the crawl space scene in The Visit,
Yes.
when they're playing
Yes.
hide and seek in the crawl space, and the grandma's just on all fours
Yes.
coming at the
That was the first one
camera.
you watched, right? The first movie you
Yes.
watched? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's how I kicked this all off, and that one had a lot of good jump
I
scares
was
in
gonna
it,
say,
but I
I thought
think
you were gonna
that
pick the
one.
one where the camera's on, like, it's almost like
Oh,
and then she just pops
I
up.
mean, that one I low key expected because I think it was in the trailer when that
Right.
movie first came
Gotcha.
out, so I
Yeah,
was
but her running on all
anticipating that
fours is
shot,
so crazy.
but the running on all fours is what did it for me. And my number 1 jump scare of the season is from my number 1 movie of the
Yes, I knew
season,
it, I
and
knew
it
it.
also came at a time where I least expected it. And it's
Jaws,
when I forget his name, but he's under the
Brody.
water inspecting the shipwreck that they just stumbled upon, and one of the bodies from the shipwreck floats into view and catches you by surprise so hard. I was not expecting it at all. There's no music cue. There's nothing that even suggests that something is about to pop out at you. It just happens. Yeah, it haunts my nightmares. Thank you, Dill.
I
And that
remember I was waiting so hard for that moment in the TikTok because that movie
Yeah.
otherwise is scary, but not like jump scary. It's more
Yeah,
like
no.
the thrill and the anticipation and the suspense. So when that
Yeah.
moment comes, it's so out of the blue, and it's in a moment that's not even supposed to be scary. They're just kind of like investigating
Right.
like the shipwreck or
Yes.
whatever, and then all of a sudden like
Exactly.
this head comes out. It is so good. And I think there's like a musical sting afterwards, but not leading into it.
Oh,
So
no, not at all.
it's so good.
They yeah. And that's what I think made this jump scare so good is that up into that point, like there wasn't really a jump scare. Like you go into a shark movie and you don't think jump scare, you just think like, oh, scary to think about like what I would do if like I was in the water and there was a shark, like
Mhm.
that's the fear of like I feel like monster movies and like shark movies and things like that. But like the jump scare, that was a doozy, that one.
Yeah, there you go. So I know we're running a little late, Kelsey. I'm sorry, but yeah, this is our
No
31 days
worries.
of Halloween recap. This was so much fun. It's so much fun watching these movies and watching you watch some of these movies for the first time was awesome. I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of things I haven't seen, but next year I think I'm gonna like maybe either next year or the year after, depending on how many I've seen. I might do like a best of like the past few years type thing where I like revisit
Mm,
just my favorites from past years. But I might
mhm.
do one more before then next year. But that's 12 months from now, so I don't have to worry about
Yeah,
it.
we'll see.
Any last words about your 31 days experience? And
Um, I had a great time. It was definitely a spooky, scary time, and
mhm,
I can wait for next year is what
yeah,
I'll say.
and I know it's not horror, but what do you think of Parasite? Really quick.
Oh, it was great.
Hmm.
It was really, really great. It had
Yeah,
some great
unexpected, right?
yeah, really it was just like I said in my video, like it was one of those movies where I expected it to go one way and it just completely went a completely separate way.
Very cool.
Um, but
Yeah.
it was good.
Great.
Enjoyed it.
And thank you for everyone who was in the chat. Carly says she always gets Sinister and Insidious confused, but she likes Sinister a lot more. That's the one
Yeah.
that Kelsey still has to watch. So watch the
Yep.
TikToks because you'll see her reaction to that. Insidious is the one I can't watch because the people looking in the windows so much early on made me turn it off. I have a real fear of people looking in my windows. I agree. Carly's gonna watch Halloween tonight. So am I, Carly. Have fun with that. She's starting November tomorrow with Cats. Yes, Carly's gonna be on our Frame Rack episode next month talking about Cats. C says, Dill have an idea for next year's draft day. Perfect, because I need another idea because we're running out of horror ideas too. Sorry, choke some seltzer, so I'm burping a little bit. And ask me about it so I don't forget. I will, Stacy. And Carly says, Happy Halloween. Yes, Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you for watching and thank you for chatting live. It's so much more fun to have like people like talking, especially stuff like this where it's not Marvel related and we can just kind of shoot the shit about horror movies. And check us out next week. We're gonna do a Loki episode. Was it 3 and 4 or 4 and 5?
4 and 5.
4 and 5. Did we do 3?
Who knows?
Yeah,
Never
3 was
mind.
yeah, I don't know. 4 and 5 review, and then the week after we'll do 6, and then the week after we'll do some trivia. The end of November, just to give you a little landscape of what November is going to be. I'm going away for the last 2 weeks of November, so the plan is do Loki, and then like the last few
Mm.
weeks of November we'll do like double or triple trivia. So we're gonna film some matches in the next few weeks. That way we can like get those out while I'm away and out of the country because I will not be able to communicate. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. Kelsey, have a happy Halloween. Do you want to try the glow in the dark thing one more time, or do you don't think it'll work?
I don't know. I tried it before. Let me try
Yeah,
it
let's try it one
again.
more time because Kelsey's outfit is supposed to glow in the dark. Yeah, a little bit.
A
There
little
you go,
bit.
everyone.
Maybe if I turn
So,
my brightness down.
yeah, maybe.
No, now I just
No,
completely
now
disappeared.
now you're looking like the
This.
face at the end of Skidamarink. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
All right. Let me
Everyone,
put my
have a
light
great
back
rest
on.
of your day and happy Halloween. We'll see you guys. Bye.